A common question when we are creating authentic content, especially posting it on social media or even publicly, is how vulnerable can we be, should we be in our content? And I recently heard a quote that I like quite a bit. I want to share that with you. The quote is, teach from your scars, not from your wounds. Or you can say share or create from your scars, not from your wounds. And I want to thank the person who kind of came up with this idea, Nadia Bolz-Weber, pretty badass person. I don't know really anything about her except as I was researching the quote, I kind of came from her. I think she's a minister, pastor, and I think she said, preach from your scars, not from your wounds. But people have used it in different ways. But that's the general idea. And I thought that was quite useful. There was another quote, which someone please look it up and comment below, that says, don't bleed on your audience. So it's a similar idea, like when you are in the middle of your pain, your struggle, you want to be careful not to bleed from your audience and not to teach from your wounds or speak from your wounds. Now, I have violated that rule many times, okay? So it's not a never. And of course, who's to say what is a wound and what is a scar? Meaning a scar, meaning something that has healed a lot already. And you're kind of talking about, a cut you had years ago and what you learned from that and how it made you stronger and how it allowed you to be more empathic towards other who just got the cut or something like that. That's the idea, right? Whereas a wound that is fresh wound, you're raw, you're still bleeding, you could emote so much that it becomes, number one, credibility eroding for you. People think less of you. You have less credibility in their minds because, whoa, you're being you're being your very raw self. That is actually not how you usually show up to your clients. So that's a question that. So again, we all have a very wide spectrum for how we consider raw wound versus a healed scar. And I guess a useful way for me to think about it is, what am I usually willing to reveal to my clients, not to a client I've had for 10 years. Okay. Maybe that's I'm much more raw with someone who I built up so much relationship with. But what am I willing to reveal to a client in the first or second session? That's a good question. Whatever, or if I'm selling an online course and I'm teaching a course, what am I willing and courageous enough to reveal to students who paid for a particular program or to my clients from the first, second, or third session? And for me, that's a bit of a calibrating question to say, okay, this is something I would share. And if it's like, no, I probably would share this with a 1-year-old client, someone who I built enough a relationship with, or a 6-month client, or someone who's a close friend only, then I would say maybe not such a good idea to share it publicly on social media, because my potential clients and my potential referral sources might not have enough context about me and my character to receive what I'm about to say with enough forgiveness or enough, benefit of the doubt, you might say. Someone who is just getting to know me might go, whoa, George is, yeah, I don't know. I don't think this person can be my coach, my consultant, my healer, my teacher, my mentor, my friend, even, right? So I hope this is helpful. And if you have any other calibrating questions for yourself to know what is too raw of a wound versus a good enough, healed enough wound that you would be willing to share it publicly, that you think is appropriate. Or a separate question for you would be, what have you seen other people share in terms of something that was too raw versus something that was vulnerable, but it was useful or healing as an experience for you to see it. Going forward, after you've seen this little discussion here, I invite you to start putting that lens on as you look at other people's social media posts, and you start to say, okay, is that a good level of vulnerability, or is that still too raw as a potential client or colleague or friend of theirs? So please let us know below. Now, if you're going to give us examples of too raw, please don't name the person, of course. But if you want to give us an example of, you know what, that was vulnerable, that was powerful, and I felt like it was a good share, even though I don't know this person super well, I think that this was a good public share. Please give us the link below, because we can especially, obviously, you're going to give us a link to a public post, a post that we can all see. They made it public, and it was a good example of a vulnerable and yet good post. Please do share that with us. We would all love to see that and learn from it. Thanks. And I want to thank Selena here for adding a great point, which is, Selena recently shared something vulnerable. I'm not going to give the details, but something vulnerable that happened relatively recently that someone might, she might, it's still a wound right now. However, she shared it as not only the story itself, but as a teaching moment. It's a teaching moment for her. She was using her own modalities for her own healing, but I think it would be healing for others to hear about that story and how she's using the modalities, and to give people hope that, healing is possible, and that it's something that she's going through right now. So this is really good, because I used to teach about this topic to say, whenever I shared something like this, I would say, woe is me, and here is how I'm dealing with it. As like I said, like a teaching moment, because I'm learning myself in the moment, and I thought other. So I think that is like a very brave and appropriate use of speaking from the wound, because it's in service to yourself. By the way, when you create content, right, it helps to heal as we process it. And we also believe it's in service to others as well, and it's service to our community, because when we share something vulnerable, our community rallies, our network rallies, our friends who see it rally around. And sometimes we may not love all the comments that come through, because maybe we're not looking for other people's pity, but people are just trying to help. And maybe some people even give us insensitive comments. So we have to understand that that's part of the risk of sharing from a wound, is that the comments we aren't going to love necessarily. It might not be healing for us, but we have to understand the risk. So, generally, and I'll say one more thing, is that the fact that you're even interested in this segment, right? How vulnerable can I be? Means that you're brave enough to try. You're brave enough to consider this, because then I applaud you, and I want to encourage you to experiment. Now, you can experiment. You could be so brave as to experiment publicly, which I tended to do in the last 10 years or so. I've been experimenting with a lot of vulnerable public content. And I'm still alive. And not only am I alive, I think my skin is thicker, okay, as a result, and I'm able to be more vulnerable. Again, it's not always been helpful for my reputation, but I think overall, it's been good for me, for my courage and my ability to be authentic. And I think generally it's good for my community. Now, you can also experiment privately. I have a client group that I facilitate, and a lot of amazing, spiritually grounded, psychologically savvy solopreneurs in there, where we are much more open with each other. And that's a great place to experiment, is in a group such as that. So if you can either have a group like this, or form a circle of friends who are willing, or circle of colleagues who are willing to experiment with this kind of content, that might be a really great place to build up the sensitivity to your own calibration, and get some feedback from these trusted allies. So I hope this is helpful, and I look forward to seeing your comments below.